Hello YouTube, it's Alec here with you, Underground. Come at you with a deck profile. I'll probably do two of these. So I've been working with a deck that is near and dear to my heart. Was looking through my binder, trying to figure out what kind of rogue decks could actually be contenders this format. I found an old favorite of mine, and that favorite is none other than Chaos Dragons. Now, my history with the deck's pretty, involved. It's the first Tier 1 deck I ever played, because obviously the deck was really cheap. I had kind of, been playing around with the structure deck before people had figured out Twilight Dragons were really broken, so by the time people had figured it out, I already had, everything. Actually, I had everything except the Solar Recharge. I just had picked up the 5-headed dragon for $5. The Future Fusion was cheap. It was all good. And so it was the first Tier 1 deck I'd ever played. Did relatively well with it. Didn't really top any regionals because I wasn't that great yet. But definitely had a lot of fun. And so seeing the deck in my binder and kind of thinking about it in context of this format, Lightpulsar Dragon never really stopped being good, and at this point in the format, it's looking like people are not playing very many ways around it. Boojins kind of have to play into it, as far as I can tell. Georgia kind of has to play into it. They don't really have, outside of 101, which is the exception to the rule, people don't really have anything. So if you can answer 101, you can pretty much force them to play your game, which is why I'm kind of coming around the deck. So I'm going to give you two deck profiles over the course of the week, because I didn't really decide what my favorite way to play in this format. I've played it both versions. As you know, when the deck first topped, it got simultaneously first place at 2 YCSs, but there were two very different versions. There was some kid named Alex, I think, who played, I think the Alex played Lightsworn Dragons, and there was another kid, and he played the Chaos Dragons that ended up becoming the prevalent version. And so I am testing both right now, because Chaos Dragons without 2 red MD is very iffy. And just because you don't have enough Eclipse Wyvern targets, and the Eclipse Wyvern plus is very important in my opinion. So Judgment Dragon just being that Eclipse Wyvern target makes the Lightsworn Dragons very appealing, but at the same time, there's definitely something to be said about the standalone version. So let's do the standalone version first, just because that's the one I've tested in person most recently. And let's not waste any more time with this exposition, and we will make another video shortly thereafter where we can talk about the Lightsworn one. So, let's go. First, 3 Lightpulsar Dragon. Obviously, the heart and soul of the deck. Level 6, 2500, destroyed, get a level 8 Dark Dragon. Hopefully red MD, but he's at 1, so maybe not so great. Now, in the standard version, unfortunately, we can only play 1 Eclipse Wyvern, which is a shame because all the structure decks I bought were these, nice miscuts, so I really would like to play more, but that's not the case. Just when you're only running 2 targets, running 2 ends up with you showing your deck a lot, and the card itself isn't good to draw because it's just a Light Dragon 1600. Doesn't really, do anything except you can obviously pitch it to revive this card from grave, which is a really good effect, by the by. The other target's Darkflare Dragon. Next up, 3 Darkflare Dragons. I was always a fan of 3 Darkflare Dragons. I know people like playing this card at 2, but the card is basically the deck's version of Dragon Shrine. If you can't mill the Lightpulsar, because milling is obviously a very random mechanic, sometimes you just gotta draw that Darkflare and force it into the graveyard, because this engrave is what's going to put off all of your plays. Also, it's a target for Lightpulsar, which is really important because you just always want to have more of those as opposed to less, because even Lightpulsar punching into a Yamato, if they have to drop a Crane, then they go -1 because now they have to deal with this. Also, he's very nice because when you're in the Boojin matchup, which is kind of the matchup I'm testing this with in mind, he's able to use his effect to actually banish things that are relevant, which is very helpful in the long run. So next, the Chaos Boss monsters. 1 Blackluster Soldier, 2 Chaos Sorcerers. It's the maximum amount you're allowed to play. They're not fair cards. So nothing to be said about that. I really wanted to focus on running as many level 6s as possible, because in this version of the deck, we are going to be running not 1, not 2, but 3 plaguespreader zombies. In the Lightsworn version, you'll see I cut this to 2 because you're able to see them a lot more when you mill more. But this guy is very good because the purpose of this deck, in my opinion right now, should be the spamming of Beals of the Dragon of the... What is this card's name? I can't even see it. These no ghost secrets are so gaudy. Of the Diabolic Dragons. So basically spam Beals. He can't be destroyed by card effects, so if you can protect him from 101, even if you can't, he gets sucked up. Lightpulsar, punch 101, gets this off of it. When Lightpulsar dies, you can bring this back, which means you can have a cycle of Beals just coming back as long as you're able to keep Lightpulsar alive, which is very easy to do. Beals is very hard to get rid of. It's a very unfair card, and so spamming it in this deck, I feel like, is like the new face of Chaos Dragons, at least as far as the standard version goes. Just because it's very pertinent, it's very hard to deal with, especially when you back it with cards that are able to protect it. So we're playing a lot of ways to spam this guy out, and keep that in mind because the next way we're going to play to spam him out are 2 Black Dragon Collerserpent and 2 White Dragon Wyvern Busters. I was not really a fan of these cards on release. They kind of have a cool like Reborn Tengu mechanic, but they're kind of like hard to use because you can't normal summon them and you can't special summon them outside their effect. But it's very nice because they're floaters. Here the idea is if you can mill one of these very early, what you can end up doing is you special summon one, then you summon your plaguespreader, either normal summon it or use its effect from grave. You will probably not use its effect from grave. Hopefully you normal summon it because you end up sinking 6 for powered Insectron. Insectron's effect activates, so they can't destroy him so long as he hits the field. And then, because this is not like Lightpulsar Dragon, these do not miss timing when you synchro with them, so you can grab your Black Collerserpent or your Wyvern Buster, whichever one you didn't use. Then you can stack this one on the top of your deck for plaguespreader again, and then you sync row 8 with the plaguespreader to get your Beals. And that's a very solid play. That's a 2-card Beals, and as we said, once you have Beals, as long as you can prevent it from getting banished, which we play a lot of ways to do, you can just keep him live with Lightpulsar because, I mean, liveness with Lightpulsar is pretty good. And you can pretty much dominate the game once you have one floating around. So just keep that play in mind. It's one of my favorites, so I felt like it was worth mentioning. Next, because as the standard version, we're going to be playing 3 Tour Guide of the Underworld. Very good. Gets your rank 3s. Levier is really nice in this deck. But otherwise, it gets at least 2 Darks engraved, which is good for just the light dark count. Lets you overlay for things like Ghost Trick Alucard, get rid of back row, Levier, revive stuff, Zen mains, just wall up and make sure that you don't lose on the life points, which is something that's very problematic for the deck. 2 Card Trooper. I'll post a deck list in the description below because this is getting long. But 2 Card Trooper for our milling, 3 Lyla, and 3 Ryko. These are obviously the most important Lightsworns because they're the ones that can get rid of back row. So, and Card Trooper is just good because it mills and then it replaces itself. So that's it for the monsters. There's a lot of them. I didn't bother to count. The deck's 40 though. Next on to the spells. Most important spell in the deck. 3 Forbidden Lands. The only thing that really stops this deck is if they can bottomless trap hole your Lightpulsar. It's pretty immune to things like bottomless. Even Solemn Warning isn't that detrimental because you usually just like 1 for 1 the Solemn Warning out with something. You can save your guys from Deprison, which like as long as there's not very many like monster effects that like banish you, and so as long as you're not banished, you're usually pretty good to go. So 3 Forbidden Lance is very important in the regular version, in my opinion. Dark Hole, obviously pluses. If you Dark Hole on top of your Lightpulsar, you can get set to revive something. Dark Hole doesn't hurt Beals. Dark Hole lets you draw cards. Very good in the deck. It's a shame that you have to mill it sometimes, but that's true about all spells in this deck. That's why we're not playing very many. 1 charge, 3 recharge. Thinking about cutting it down to 2 recharge, and you might. A problem with this deck is that I do see a lot of dead recharges, but I don't want to play less than 3 because it's a very good card. If you get a Solar Recharge off, you really jumpstart your deck. And finally, we're only going to be playing 2 traps. The traps are very, very important. And those 2 traps are going to be Skill Prisoner. I actually don't recommend this for a lot of decks. The card's very linear in its uses, but like I said, 101 is pretty much the only out you can get to Beals. So if you can get a Beals with a Skill Prisoner behind it, there's not really much they can do, because you can stop that 101 from happening. Then when it's in the grave, you can banish it, stop a 101 again if they're playing the second one. Very, very hard to get around, so 2 Skill Prisoner, very important. Next on to the extra deck. 2 Beals. You should play 2 because it's kind of the win condition, is at least how I'm playing the deck now. And maybe I'm playing it wrong, and you guys can let me know as we discuss Chaos Dragons and Lightsworn Dragons over the next week, but get 2. It's just expensive, and I'm actually just borrowing this one. 1 Powered Insectron, obviously the play we talked about. Kind of the best level 6 in my opinion, just because it has a lot of attack. It has at least a semi-relevance effect. Maybe you can play Behemoth if you want, or other level 6s. It's just, I don't really like the level 6s that much. 1 Void Ogre Dragon. It's kind of the same thing with plaguespreader. You can keep its effect live. It's very hard to get this guy banished, and it's a Lightpulsar target, so that's why I enjoy playing him in the deck, but I don't use him very often, so it's not the biggest deal. 1 Black Rose Dragon. Plaguespreader plus Darkflare. Clear the field. That's very nice, especially backed by Forbidden Lands. Sometimes you can just get those cheap victories in. What else? Oh, 1 Scrap Dragon. You can pop stuff. That's pretty cool. Next, we are going to go to the Xseeds. We're only going to play 1 with rank 6. That's going to be M7. M7 lets you go for game in weird, obscure ways. Really the only, important one that I see, because he goes to bounce stuff, lets you use a Lightpulsar and a Chaos Dragon. Really, you only use them if you're going for game. So, none of the other ones are really relevant, because Lightpulsar and Chaos Sorcerer by themselves are, standalone, just better than any rank 6 you could pump out. So, we're not really going to waste the extra deck space there. Rank 4s, we've got 101, Abyss Dweller, Level Chain, Queen Dragon Djinn, and there should be an Evil Swarm X-Tonite there, but obviously, you've already heard my complaints on the card. I can't afford it. I complain about it all the time, so if I ever play this deck competitively, I'm going to have to borrow one or do what I have to do, and same goes for you guys. But, if you want to play it optimally, the X-Tonite's actually pretty important, because you actually minus yourself in card advantage a lot. So if you can get, a Wyvern Buster, a Collerserpent with a Lyla, or something like that off to get the Exciton play, you can just steal games that you shouldn't win, which is really important to do when you're playing a rogue deck. So, unfortunately, Excitonite's going to be necessary here. Rank 3s, I'm only playing 3. Ghost Trick Alucard, very nice with Tour Guide because it turns it into back row removal. Also, it's a dark, so if you use it with Tour Guide, that's exactly 3 darks, makes that instantly live, which is a good way to steal games as well. Levier lets you revive things that you want to get back, which is good for a lot of reasons. And obviously Zen Main's just a wall up. And last spot's obviously kind of in the air. Right now I'm playing Armadreus because you can use it to hurt the Bujin matchup. And obviously, like I said, I kind of built this to beat Bujins. It does so about 50% of the time. Unfortunately, Chaos Dragons kind of beat themselves from time to time, so it's a little bit hard to say that I can beat Bujins 100% of the time. I haven't found a build to do that. I'm hoping to find a build to do that. Hopefully, working together, we will find a build to do that. The side deck isn't anything terribly creative, so I'm not really going to bother. It's 3 MSTs, 3 Decrees, the hand traps. I mean, it's Chaos Dragons, guys. Luckily, because of the, Bujin Dark World sort of stigmas happening right now, you don't really have to worry about people siding, tons and tons of, D5 macro, which is really nice, and they're at 1, but hopefully your MSTs cover it, and your Lylas, Rykos cover it, so you should never be doing, too terribly bad there. Really, the only thing of, concern, I guess, is spellbooks, which I haven't tested against, a ton. This one's getting my eyes. I haven't tested against spellbooks a ton. Obviously, the DD Crows are one of the hand traps that I'm citing. They're going to be, particularly pertinent in that matchup, so remember to keep them in mind. So, that's a lot of discussing. I'll have the deck list in the description below for you guys who didn't watch, which I guess isn't really important to tell you now, but hopefully you guys have some insight on this. Obviously, I'm kind of going to switch my philosophy here. I used to not really talk about decks that I'm like not really sure on, but I don't know what direction to go in to make this 100% work. But I really love Chaos Dragons, and I really think with like the release of Beals that there's got to be a way to make it work, because people scooped a Beals Skill Prisoner, and with a Lance in hand, I tell you, like, there's something there. We just have to find it, and working together is what we're going to do. So, rate, comment, subscribe, guys, and be sure to watch the Lightsworn version just to see what other ideas we have here at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Underground, and comment below with your own ideas. Thanks, guys.